Thanks for watching and liking the video. I realized the load in my trailer wasn't what I signed up for. I was halfway through Nebraska when it hit me. Quiet road, empty sky, and one message on my phone that didn't make sense. My name was on every document. Only my name. No dispatcher. No sender. No receiver. Just me. And the payout for the trip was way too high for something that simple. In that moment, sitting alone in the cab, I felt something shift. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a cold, steady crack running through the life I thought I understood. I've been driving trucks most of my adult life. Nothing fancy. Just miles, contracts, and enough money to keep things steady. I never chased anything big. I wasn't built for shortcuts. I always thought that if I kept my head down and did the work, life would stay simple. That was the hope I carried every morning when I climbed into the cab. But a few months before that strange trip, things started slipping. Rates were going down, expenses were going up, and I felt pressure I hadn't felt before. Not panic, just a quiet weight. I kept telling myself I'd push through. Then one evening a guy I barely knew mentioned a run that paid almost double the usual rate. Easy haul, he said. I didn't think much of it at the time, but the number stuck with me. I tried to brush it off, but it kept coming back. I caught myself wondering why I shouldn't take it. I told myself it was just one run. I wasn't chasing greed. It was more like I wanted one moment where things felt easier. One break. I didn't say that out loud, but I felt it. When the offer finally came through, I said yes quicker than I expected. I remember hanging up and sitting still for a minute. Something felt off, but I pushed it away. I needed the win. The pickup was scheduled early in the morning on the edge of Des Moines. The place looked ordinary enough. Small warehouse, a couple of trailers backed into the docks, nothing that stood out. A man in a gray jacket walked up, handed me a folder, and said the load was ready. His tone was clipped, like he had somewhere else to be. I remember thinking it was strange he didn't ask for anything from me. No license, no signature, nothing. I told myself they were just moving fast. The folder looked clean. Too clean. Fresh paper, no stamps, no handwriting. I noticed it, paused for a second, then pushed the thought away. I kept thinking about the payout. It felt like a chance to breathe, even for a little while. I kept telling myself, it's fine. Don't overthink it. When the forklift guys loaded the pallets, nobody made eye contact. They moved quick, didn't say a word, didn't even nod. I tried to break the silence with a simple all good. One of them said, yeah, you're good, without looking up. I shrugged it off, climbed into the cab, and started the route like it was any other job. The first few hours felt smooth. The highway was open, the truck was running steady, and I tried to settle into the familiar rhythm. I kept checking the route, reading the notes in the folder, expecting something complicated, but the delivery address was a simple drop-off in Colorado. Nothing special. I felt a small sense of relief. Maybe I had just imagined the weirdness. Around noon I stopped at a rest area, grabbed a coffee, and looked through the papers again. The numbers lined up, the dates matched, everything looked official. I told myself I was being paranoid. I'd been stressed for months. Maybe that was all this was. For a moment, I even felt good. The payout kept echoing in my head, and I thought, maybe this is exactly what I needed. I got back on the road telling myself it was just another haul. The truck felt lighter than usual, almost like the drive was helping me believe I hadn't made a mistake. I didn't know yet how quickly that feeling would start to fall apart. About an hour after I left the rest area, something started bothering me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a steady feeling that something didn't line up. I kept glancing at the folder on the passenger seat. Every time I looked at it, I felt the same quiet pull in my gut. I tried to shake it off, but the thought kept returning. The paperwork was too clean. I reached out to call the number listed in the instructions. It went straight to a recorded message that didn't match the name of any company. A flat voice said the line was disconnected. I hung up and tried again, thinking maybe the signal had dropped. Same message. I felt my focus tighten. I don't usually chase shadows, but this wasn't nothing. I pulled into another rest stop, parked the truck, and stared at the address on the papers. It looked like a commercial building outside Denver, but there was no company name, just a street number. I Googled it on my phone. The place barely came up. No listings, no photos, no reviews. That wasn't normal. Most places had something online, even if it was old. I felt a calm I didn't expect. Not fear. More like a steady sense of alertness. I called the guy who first mentioned the run, just to check something. He didn't pick up. I called again. Nothing. I left a short message asking him to call me back. I didn't mention why. I just needed to hear his voice. When I slid the folder open again, I noticed something I'd missed. My name wasn't just on the top page. It was everywhere. Sender, pickup contact, delivery contact. Every slot that should have had someone else's name was filled with mine. I felt the weight of that sink in. Someone had built the whole thing around a single real identity, mine. I sat there for a long minute, hands still on the wheel. I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I just felt a slow, growing clarity. Things like this didn't happen by mistake. Someone wanted me to look legitimate on paper while they stayed out of sight. A truck pulled in across from me, but I barely noticed. I kept staring at the folder. The payout had blinded me more than I wanted to admit. I whispered to myself, something's wrong here. Hearing my own voice say it made it real. I closed the folder, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway. The road looked the same, but everything in my head felt different. I knew I was driving into a problem. I just didn't know how big it was yet. The sun started dropping when I finally admitted to myself that I couldn't keep driving blind. The more miles I put behind me, the more the road felt like a straight line into someone else's mess. I kept checking the mirrors, not because anyone was following me, but because I needed something to break the pressure building in my chest. Nothing changed. Same highway, same sky, just me in a load I no longer trusted. I tried calling the number on the dispatch sheet one more time. Same pre-recorded message. I tried the guy who'd pitched me the job. Straight to voicemail. That silence told me more than any answer could. Nobody wanted to be tied to this run except me, and not by choice. As the Colorado border got closer, something clicked. If the address wasn't real and the contact didn't exist, then the delivery didn't matter. What mattered was who would be waiting when I showed up. And it wouldn't be the people on the paperwork. It would be whoever actually owned the cargo. People who didn't want their names on anything. I slowed down, pulled onto the shoulder, and left the engine running. I opened the trailer from the side door, just enough to peek in. I didn't touch anything. I just looked. The pallets were wrapped tight. No labels, no markings, nothing that said what the boxes held. That alone said plenty. Honest loads don't hide. I stepped back, shut the door, and leaned against the truck. A cold thought settled in. If this was stolen, if the paperwork was fake, then my name was the only thing connecting all of it. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't a contractor. I was a shield. Someone had decided I was quiet enough, ordinary enough, to disappear behind. I stood there longer than I meant to. I kept thinking about the payout, how quick I'd said yes, how I'd ignored every small sign because I wanted one easy break. It wasn't greed. It was tired hope. That was the part that stung the most. The sky kept getting darker, and I felt something steady forming inside me. Not panic, not anger, just a simple, solid understanding. I couldn't deliver this to whoever was waiting. If I did, I'd be part of something I couldn't explain or walk back from. I climbed back into the cab and sat still, hands on the wheel. I knew what I had to do next. The moment I accepted that, the road ahead stopped feeling like a trap and started feeling like a decision I hadn't made yet. I sat there with the engine humming, watching the last bit of daylight fade out. The decision felt heavy, but clean. If I kept going toward Denver, I'd be walking straight into someone else's plan. If I turned around, I'd be running. Neither option felt right. I needed a third path, something that didn't leave me tangled in their mess or hiding from it. I pulled up the map on my phone and searched for the nearest police station. There was one 20 miles off the highway, small town, nothing complicated. The idea hit hard. I didn't move for a moment. Turning myself in wasn't the right phrase. I hadn't done anything. But I knew the minute I showed up with that load, the questions would land on me first, and answering them was better than pretending nothing was wrong. I took a long breath and eased the truck back onto the road. The moment the wheels hit the pavement, I felt something settle. Not relief, just certainty. The payout didn't matter anymore. The job didn't matter. I needed to step out of whatever this was before it locked around me. The drive to the town felt longer than it should have. Every mile I imagined someone calling, someone stopping me, someone showing up behind me. None of that happened. The highway stayed empty, quiet, like it didn't care what choice I'd made. I kept my eyes on the mirrors anyway. When I reached the exit, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My hand froze over the screen. I let it ring. It stopped, then rang again immediately. I felt a tight pull in my stomach, but didn't answer. Whoever it was hadn't called me once since the run started. They only cared now that I'd gone off route. I shut the phone off. The silence felt sharp, but right. The station was small, one-story, with a couple of cars parked outside. I pulled the truck into the lot and stopped. No one came out. No lights turned on. Just me and the sound of the engine slowly settling. I sat there for a few seconds, staring at the building, thinking about the moment I agreed to the run. How fast I'd said yes. How different this ending looked from the one I pictured. I turned off the truck, climbed down, and walked toward the door. Every step felt steady. I wasn't looking for protection or sympathy. I just wanted the truth out in the open before someone else decided what it meant. Inside the station, the air felt still, like the place had been quiet for hours. A man at the front desk looked up, surprised to see someone walk in that late. I told him I needed to speak to whoever was on duty. My voice came out steady, almost flat. He asked what it was about. I said I had a trailer outside with paperwork that didn't look right. That was enough for him to call someone from the back. A sergeant stepped out, older guy, calm, the kind who'd seen plenty but didn't show it. He asked me to explain. I handed him the folder. He flipped through it with a slow, deliberate focus. When he saw my name printed in every slot, he stopped. He didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then he asked me if I knew the company. I told him I didn't. He asked if I knew the sender. I said no. Receiver? None. He kept looking at me like he was waiting for a different answer. We walked out to the truck. He shined a small flashlight through the gap in the trailer door. He didn't open anything, just looked at the wrapping, the blank pallets, the way everything had been stacked too neatly. He stepped back and took a breath through his nose, slow and tired. He told me to stay where I was while he called it in. I stood there, hands at my sides, watching him make the call. I wasn't scared. I wasn't shaking. I just felt the weight of the situation settle into place. I'd walked myself into something I didn't understand, and now every word I said mattered. When he hung up, he asked me to come back inside and wait. I followed him without saying anything. They brought me into a small room, not an interrogation room, just a space where they could ask questions without people walking by. Another officer joined us and started going through the details. Where I picked up the load. Who gave me the job? What exactly they said. I answered everything slowly, making sure I didn't guess or assume. I stuck to what I actually knew, which wasn't much. After a while, the sergeant told me they believed the load was part of a larger theft case they'd been hearing whispers about. Nothing confirmed. Nothing official. Just rumors. And now here I was, the only real name tied to anything. He said it carefully, not accusing me, just laying out the facts. Sitting there, I felt something settle inside me. This was the price. Not fear. Not trouble. Just the clean, cold reality of stepping into a mess I never should have touched. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain myself. They had the truth. That was enough. All I could do was sit there and let the night move forward without me. They kept me at the station until early morning. No handcuffs, no raised voices, just steady questions and long pauses. When the sun finally pushed through the windows, the sergeant came back with a quiet update. He said the load was being checked, the trailer was sealed, and a detective from the county would take over. Then he told me something I hadn't expected. I was free to go, but the truck wasn't. Hearing that hit harder than I thought it would. The truck wasn't new, wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every mile I'd driven for years lived in that cab. Losing it felt personal. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. He told me they'd call when they knew more. I didn't ask when. I could tell he didn't know. I walked outside and stood in the parking lot, looking at the trailer from a distance. It felt strange seeing it without walking toward it. Strange knowing I wouldn't be climbing back into the driver's seat. My phone was still off. I turned it on and watched as it lit up with missed calls from that same unknown number. No messages, just calls. I deleted them without opening the call log. I sat on the curb for a few minutes, trying to figure out what the next move looked like. I didn't have a plan. The contract I'd been working under would fall apart the second they heard about this. Even if the police cleared me, no company wanted a driver tied to a load under investigation. That thought didn't shake me as much as I thought it would. Maybe because I'd already accepted it during the night. The detective arrived and spoke with me briefly. He said they'd need statements, maybe more questions later, but he didn't treat me like someone hiding anything. He told me to stay reachable. I said I would. He nodded and walked off. With the truck locked down, the only thing left for me was to find a ride home. I booked a small-town cab and waited on a bench outside the station. The morning air felt sharp, almost new. I kept thinking about the moment I'd taken the job, how I'd convinced myself it was fine, how I'd ignored the signs because I wanted that one clean break. Sitting there, I realized I was standing at a different kind of break. Not one I chose, but one I needed to face. I didn't know what the next days would look like, but I knew one thing clearly. Whatever came next, it would have to start without the truck and without the life I had before the run. The cab dropped me off at home a little after noon. The house looked the same as when I'd left for the run, but stepping inside felt different. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone in front of me, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. The silence felt heavier now that the night was over and the adrenaline was gone. A few hours passed before the detective called. His voice was calm, but firm. He said the load was confirmed stolen from a warehouse in Kansas 2 days before I picked it up. The paperwork was fake. The pickup location was rented under a false name, and the people who arranged the run had used drivers before. The only difference this time was that the last guy didn't show up. I had taken his place without knowing it. He told me something else. The man who originally mentioned the job to me, the one who hadn't answered any of my calls, had disappeared. His number wasn't tied to any real account. No address. No trace. He was part of the chain, just another face they used to get workers like me to say yes. Hearing that settled something inside me. Whatever guilt I was holding on to cracked a little. I'd walked into a trap, but I wasn't the only one. The detective said they believed the people behind the scheme had realized the load was now in police custody. They hadn't tried to pick it up. They hadn't called the station. They hadn't asked questions. They were cutting their losses and moving on. He said it plainly, like it was something he'd seen before. After the call, I walked outside and sat on the steps. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from the contracting company I'd been working under. They were terminating my contract, pending investigation. No anger, no explanation. Just a clean sentence that closed the door. I stared at the screen for a while, then turned the phone off again. Late in the evening, the sergeant called with one final update. They'd found prints on the pallets, none of them mine. The load was officially taken off me. I was clear. No charges. No hearings. No follow-ups except a written statement. He said, "You did the right thing bringing it in." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. When the call ended, I sat alone in the quiet house. The job was gone. The truck was held as evidence for now, and whatever future I thought I had was shifting fast. But underneath all of that, something felt steady. I'd made a choice that didn't need applause or sympathy. It was just the only choice that let me walk forward without dragging someone else's dirt with me. The next morning, I drove to the impound lot to collect the few personal things I kept in the cab. They handed me a small box with my logbook, gloves, and a couple of tools. The truck stayed behind the fence. I didn't ask when I'd get it back. The answer wouldn't change anything. I sat in my car for a long minute, holding the box on my lap. It felt strange how light it was. Years of work, and this was all I carried out. No one was waiting for me. No calls came in. No explanations needed to be given. The road I'd lived on for so long had gone quiet. I drove home without turning on the radio. When I got inside, I put the box on the floor and didn't open it. I looked at it once, then turned off the lights and walked out of the room. Appreciate you watching all the way through. Drop your thoughts below. I read every comment. Don't forget to subscribe for more.